Welcome into Lions Draft Weekend. I am Tori Petry, joined by Twentyman and Mike O'Hara. I am back in Xfinity Studio after a week in Nashville. It was a great time down there in Nashville. They had a great party going on for the draft. Really one of the best drafts that I have been to on site. And the Lions got their 8th pick in TJ Hockenson. Gentlemen, you guys were back here covering things from here in Detroit. What did you think of the 8th pick?
Well, first of all, I'm glad they didn't throw away those initials TJ when TJ Lang retired, because we had a void for TJ. Look, I thought he was a guy that I had part of my group there, and Tim probably agree with this, that he was one of the 4 or 5 guys I had listed at number 8. It wasn't my first pick, but I thought it was good enough, and I think it fills a void.
Well, I think, when you look at last year, where was this team the weakest? Was it on defense or offense?
Offense,
It was
tight
on
end.
offense.
Yeah.
It was on offense, and this was a position of need. They had one tight end that they went and filled in free agency in Jesse James, kind of a true starter, and they needed a second one. Look, they want to run 12 personnel. That's 2 tight ends, 1 running back. Well, you need 2 tight ends that are starting caliber guys to do it, and that's what they got in TJ Hockenson. Not only does he help in the pass game, but he helps in the run game as well, and I think that's important to remember to people out there, is that he is one of the better blockers. If you watch his game tape, and you can watch every single game, it appears in every game, he dominates the line of scrimmage. He dominates defensive ends. He dominates slot corners. He dominates outside linebackers. Everybody he goes against, he dominated, and I think that is a huge thing, is you're getting a guy that can help in the pass and the run. He upgrades the offense.
And, there's another advantage to that too, guys, and that is if you have a 3-down tight end, you don't have to big substitutions. You keep your offense on the field, and that means the defense can't substitute. So you have an advantage. You can really dictate what you want to do if you have that versatility in your lineup, and you pair him with Jesse James and whoever else comes in there, and you've really got a force now that was completely lacking, completely void in 2018.
We all go through a ton of prospects, and I had never seen anything like that from a young guy, because I think that's one of the hardest transitions for most tight ends, especially with the way the college game is played now. You don't see a lot of guys line up in line and asked to do the things that they're going to be asked to do in the NFL, and he did. He came from a program in Iowa where he was asked to do those things, and he dominated doing them. And so it's a perfect fit. I think he comes in better prepared to play the program than most tight ends in probably a while, just because of what he does as an inline blocker.
I'd agree with that. And you hear the pro coaches who get players out of Iowa. Kirk Ferentz down there, the head coach, really prepares his guys to play at the next level. He's got an NFL background, way back, but he prepares them for the next level. Look, it's a huge jump, and he's not just going to throw guys around, walk in and start dominating, but he'll find a way. And he's already got a base of experience from college in 3 years of sort of playing at the next level type of game.
My biggest takeaway from talking to him down in Nashville was that he really is the type of character player that Matt Patricia and Bob Quinn look for. All his answers to questions, the way that he talked about how he was going to come in and be the low guy on the totem pole and earn other people's respect. That's what they look for when they add guys to this roster. And so I was impressed with how he talked and his demeanor, and I thought he fit what Matt Patricia and Bob Quinn look for in a person very well.
Well, and I think the other part of that, too, is I think he's a football guy. I think he kind of lives and breathes football. He wants to be in the building. He wants to get better. He wants to study guys. He talked about that on the conference call, how he looks at a lot of film and takes good attributes from other tight ends and tries to put them in his game. And so that's the part of it, too. You want guys that want to be in the building, that want to watch film, that want to get better. And, he's a terrific person and that whole bit too, but I think he just loves football. And I think you need to bring as many guys into the building with that attribute as well.
There's just another aspect of that too. A kid comes from Chanton, Iowa, population about 4,000. He's already made one substantial jump in his lifestyle jump, going from that little town to major college football at Iowa. That is a big-time, massive program with big crowds. Sort of like the University of Florida, Michigan State, schools like that. And he did it seamlessly after a redshirt season, dominated the next 2 years. So it looks to me like a kid who's got a focus, and he's not afraid to make the jump to the next level.
All right, you guys were here for Bob Quinn's press conference last night where he talked about TJ Hockenson. What did you think about what Bob had to say about him?
Well, I think he said he checked off all the boxes, and I think when you look at, some of the struggles on offense last year for this team, red zone. I think he fills that box. Third down. This was a team that struggled on third down. Now you get Matthew Stafford, kind of a security blanket type guy and a tight end. And then I think the other thing is the 12 personnel that I took from that. I think Darrell Bevell wants to run 2 tight ends. He wants to run that 12 personnel. They want to be more balanced. playing two tight ends allows you to be very balanced because you can run to either side. You can also include those guys in the pass game. You can be 50-50, and those are some of the things I think he just filled out all the kind of boxes that they wanted to get better on offense.
And I think also just a little broader than this, I think, and you'll see in a span of 2 seasons, 2018 and 2019, a sea change in how the Detroit Lions operate from the top of the franchise to on the field to the bottom. It's completely different.
All right, well, that is our wrap-up of our thoughts on TJ Hockenson. He was in the building today getting to know his new surroundings here in Detroit. You'll hear from him in his press conference, as well as see what it was like for him coming into the building for the very first time. Take a look.
This place is on fire now.
Nice to meet you. Yeah. It's great to have you.
Nice to meet you.
Coach?
What's going on? How you doing, bud? Congrats, man. How are you?
I'm so excited.
Ready to roll?
Oh, man.
Good deal. Well, we're very excited, and obviously, just someone that we really wanted to get in the draft and fell our way. We were actually just talking about the Plinko.
Yeah.
So I was like, hey, meant to be.
Weird,
Yeah, and did you know he had his Lion King socks on?
We heard that later on.
That's great. Good.
Yeah. It'll be a good day for everyone to meet and kind of get orientated.
Everybody's real excited. So we can't
I'm
wait.
super excited. No one speaks me, so I'm excited. Oh, that's awesome.
The Ford World Headquarters is right across that street right there.
Oh, man,
Where
yeah.
they do all the testing in the buildings.
Oh, that's pretty sweet. Yeah, no, this is awesome. I love it. How you doing? TJ.
Good to have you, man.
Oh, I'm
Great
excited to
have
be
you.
here.
How you doing, sir? Nice
My
to
mom.
meet you. Hey, ma'am. Good to meet y'all.
Nice to meet you.
Right here.
How's it going? TJ.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you,
Welcome.
No, thank you.
Nice to meet you. Todd Hawkinson, nice to meet you. Pleasure to meet you guys. Pleasure to meet you.
Yeah, excited to be here. Beautiful facility, yeah.
We are very excited about the addition of TJ, and when the opportunity came up last night in the draft, he's somebody that we targeted, somebody that we definitely knew would be a great fit here in our organization. It was really just a perfect match when it came up on the draft board, and as you sit and wait in the room and you look at the draft picks and the names that come off, and you have target guys that you're looking at, and as TJ was there, certainly we were getting excited, but didn't want to get too excited, and after the picks came in and we were up, and we just basically had to wait because we had the card ready to go right away.
These guys are starting on Monday. I'm like, hey, coach, you mind if I come? I want to get started. So, I got to wait a couple weeks for rookie minicamp to come around, and I just want to dive into this playbook and learn from the best. I did not know. I mean, I'll be 100% honest with you. I didn't. Throughout the entire draft, you don't know. Each pick comes in, and you never know who it's going to be. There's certain places that you may be able to go, but you never know. The sock choice was completely by coincidence. The Lion King has been my favorite movie ever since I was little, and Disney. So I was like, let's do it. So it's awesome. There was a lot of signs that came to this with the dropping of that puck or whatever, and then the socks, and all I had was blue. So I was meant to be here, and I'm excited to start this. I was part of a little league baseball team, and we were the Tigers. So I had the old English D on the hat, and I wore that everywhere. And then I played a lot of NHL video games when I was really little with my cousins, and I was always the Red Wings. So there's been a few signs that have taken me to this point. In this city, this organizations, I've heard nothing but great things. So like I said, I'm excited to get started. You have to prove yourself. I mean, this game isn't for people that aren't willing to work, and that's what's awesome about coming from the University of Iowa is you had to work. You have to work for everything, and I'm going to go back to those roots and work for everything that's given to me. Isn't that cool? I mean, really. I mean, you get to play football for a living. That's the best feeling in the world. There's no words to describe that.
Great to hear from TJ today, but there's still a lot more action to come with the draft. Rounds 2 and 3 kick off tonight. Gentlemen, there's still needs on the Lions roster. Where do you see them at?
You looked at me. You want to go.
Oh, yeah.
He's rearing to go.
He's rearing. He looked down and looked at me. He was ready to roll. Okay.
Tim is supposed to set me up for this
the
one.
floor is Michael's. Here we go.
Look, the Lions pick 43rd, the 11th pick in round 2, and then pick number 25. That is 45 spots between picks. Do you think, honestly, that Bob Quinn is going to sit there for 45 picks and not make a move? 23, 25, 28. I got to do something.
43 to 88 is a long time, and I agree with you. And I agree with you because you looked at last night, one wide receiver off the board.
Right.
One cornerback off the board. A ton of interior linemen still available in day 2. And I look at this day 2, and I think it's one of the better day 2s in a long time, just in terms of pure talent and guys that can come into your program and start. And it just so happens that a lot of these guys are at positions of need. Just some of the names that I look at. And look, the Lions can still get a pass rusher, too. I think a couple of those guys, Jalen Ferguson, who, just so happens to be the all-time leader in sacks in college football history. Chase Winovich, a guy that I like from Michigan. I know Rashawn Gary got a lot of the headlines, but Chase Winovich got more of the production, and with me, I like production. And so, he's another guy to look at. The cornerbacks, there's a ton of them. Byron Murphy, everyone thought he was a first-round pick. I think he's first-round talent. He fits this scheme perfectly. Man coverage guy, gets his hand on footballs. And Greedy Williams this year, Justin Lane, when we go over the offensive line, a guy like Cody Ford, I don't know if he'll be there, with the 43rd pick, but he's another guy like Dalton Reisner. And then the receivers, Paris Campbell, Debo Samuel. I think there's a lot of really, really good guys. Did I leave anyone for you, Mike?
Those were my guys.
Yeah, trying to set you up.
We can agree. I think there's just a lot of really, really good talent at positions of need. So this turns out to be a terrific day 2 for Bob Quinn and the guys in that room down the hall.
And Cody Ford, too. There's a lot of guys that had him rated around 25, 27, 28. Still there. Jawan Taylor, of course, you mentioned. Look, I thought he would be a top 8 pick, top 7 pick. I thought he would kind of fill out one of those spots and leave somebody for the Detroit Lions. He didn't. He's still sitting around.
And some of those guys along the offensive line, remember Bob Quinn talked in his pre-draft press conference about that, them spending a lot of time on guys who were versatile, who played both inside and outside in college. Cody Ford is one of those guys. Dalton Risner is one of those guys still available. So Bob Quinn and those guys are going to be very familiar with those guys in the second round. And so I wouldn't be surprised at all if the Lions maybe try to fill that right guard spot in day 2, add some depth to that secondary at cornerback, or even go wide receiver. I think the options are really open at positions of need. They're in a good spot.
Yeah, and I kind of made a joke about T.J. Lang in one of our spots, but really there is an opening there that's got to be filled with his retirement. Look, even though he played only 6 games last year because of injury, he was the starting right guard. And we'll see who steps into that position. But you really want somebody that, if they're going to run the ball, you've got to have power in the interior. Get those, those guys who are quick off the ball, they shoot the B gaps and all that. You want to make sure that you can firm up there on the interior of your offensive line. And until proven otherwise, that's still a need.
And I think you have a couple veteran guys that can step in and do that and will certainly compete. But I think you need to add a young guy to that.
Absolutely.
You got to get some guy that hopefully you have a long-term plan for at that spot. He learns from those guys. Maybe those older guys beat him out, but now he's in a good spot long-term, and I think that's what they need to address here.
Yeah, and I'd agree with that. And if you can really plug in that spot, and we're talking about right guard predominantly right now, you can just kind of button that up and say, okay, that's our offensive line for the next 3 to 4 years.
And now we have our tight end. Now we have 3 receivers we like. We can add a young guy to the mix. We like our running back. And now all of a sudden, offensively, you got to feel pretty good about where you're at. If you get a starting tight end and a starting right guard out of this draft, I think if you're Bob Quinn, you come out of it and you're like, wow, I think we've improved that side of the football.
And what you want is ultimately is Matthew Stafford to take his 3-5-step drop, and boy, it's kind of lonely back here. I think I'll throw the ball.
That's the goal. Do you guys see them going defense at all on day 2?
Sure. I think the cornerback is especially in play. They've got a lot of guys in that mix, but I still think they'd like to add a young guy to that mix, and I think there's a bunch of terrific guys. I mentioned them. Byron Murphy, Greedy Williams, Justin Lane, all guys that I thought could have been first-round guys. Justin Lane, a late first-round guy. Certainly, I don't expect him to get out of the second round. So I think there's guys there that can come in, compete for a starting spot right away, and at least contribute special teams, do some stuff, learn, and maybe earn themselves a spot later in the year. And then the pass rusher. I mentioned a couple off the top. I still think they need one. Mike, you and I talked last night about them being able to generate pass rush and some of those things.
Through scheme, yeah.
Through scheme. But, you've always got to prepare for, what you can't anticipate. What happens if something happens to Trey Flowers? What if there's an injury up front? I think you need a young guy that can be able to step in if something like that happens. And so I think pass rusher is certainly in play as well.
Sure, if you can put a young guy in there, now let's just say he plays 30% of the snaps, but you want those snaps to be high-quality snaps. When he's on the field, you want them to go, here comes our speed guy. We've got to account for him.
And that's a pretty creative defensive mind down the hall there. And he gets a lot of guys in, a lot of different packages, a lot of movement up front. You can never have too many pass rushers, especially for a scheme like that. And so certainly another pass rusher adding to that mix makes sense.
The jump in sacks they made last year, just basically through scheme. And look, they added Romeo Okwara, a waiver claim. Guys like that. They really wasn't a primetime individual pass rusher. I think Matt Patricia uses up an awful lot of lead in that pencil, finding things to do.
Okwara had 7 sacks. I think he had maybe 1, 2 the 2 years before. So I think he gets the most out of the guys he has. And I think that's a terrific trait. And so the more guys you can add to defense when you have a defensive staff that gets the most out of them, well, wow, that makes sense.
All right, mock drafts are very popular around round 1. We don't do as many of them when we get to round 2 and 3. Going to put you guys on the spot here. We won't pick names, but if you had to choose 2 position groups that would be important to address, doesn't mean that that's what they'll draft because it all comes down to who falls where on the board. But if you had to pick 2 position groups that are most likely to be addressed, I know you threw your paper there, Mike. But
Am I
what
setting
do you
you
think?
up for this one, or are you ready to
No,
roll?
just read it to me. No, I would say offensive line and defensive back, either a safety or a cornerback.
Hey, returning the favor.
You can have the other. You can have the other 9 positions.
Here we go.
Punter and long snapper are all yours.
No, I agree with you. I think if you can get somebody that you think can plug in to be that right guard, and then you get a guy that you think can maybe compete for being an outside cornerback, I think you've left the first 3 rounds with a starter at tight end, a right guard, and a cornerback. You're in great shape.
When I wink at her, it's time for you to stop talking. Okay, I'll give you one though. I definitely think he's going to trade up out of 88, and then here's one. Write this down, keep the tape, trade back up into the bottom of the 3rd round, and get your young quarterback.
Bold prediction.
Yeah.
Who's the quarterback?
Stay tuned. We're going to do another segment. Stay tuned.
Well, we've got bold predictions, and we're out of notes, so I guess that wraps it up here for us on this night 2 preview of the draft. Thanks, guys, so much for tuning in. We know you guys are excited for night 2, and there will be more highlights to come, but we will leave you with this highlight from TJ Hockenson. Take a look.